In the same way that we speak different languages in different countries, each of our brains has its own little unique preference for processing information. And it makes a whole lot more difference in guiding your customers through their buying journey than you think. I'm Ivana Taylor. I'm the host of Bizapalooza Chat and the publisher of DIY Marketers. And today we're going to talk about how to use learning styles in your content marketing. Our guest today is educational psychologist and coach, Dr. Dorie Cooper. On Twitter, you know her as @SittingPretty. And today she's going to pull the proverbial curtain back on how we learn and why it's so important to connect to specific learning styles in our content. Hi, Dorie. I am so happy to have you with us today.
Hi.
Okay, so let's kind of talk a little bit about this topic of learning styles and content. Maybe you can sort of explain how it is that we process information differently.
Well, it's based on Howard Gardner's learning theories, that he basically said not everybody processes information, and came up with 9 different learning ideas, from movement to visual to auditory, body, natural, and existential. And I think I started thinking about this in terms of content marketing. And I realized that if we need to communicate to students the same way, that this is a way we need to think about what we're curating and what we're making in terms of content, especially these days with the digital world. And one thing I see all the time is that there's too much text, that everybody gets too much text, and I'm guilty of it as well. And I thought it would make an interesting blog post, and here we are.
Well, I think you're spot on. I actually read some of Howard Gardner's, and we'll have the link in the show notes here for folks to read up on about some of these things. But I read Howard Gardner years and years ago, maybe like 25 years ago, 26 years ago when I got into this. And it's one of the main differences that I attribute when I tell people that I'm shy. That surprises them, because I'm actually an interactive learner. So I learn by engaging with others, but that doesn't make me less shy. I need to process content. I can read something, or maybe I have an interaction and then I bounce back and forth. So maybe you could apply some of that in terms of different kinds of content. Is there a way are there people who maybe prefer to listen and watch audio and then go to text? Or I'm not exactly sure. Maybe you can kind of shed some light on those types of information processing folks and engagement.
Well, I think some people prefer to learn. I also think that's why podcasts are so popular. And many people can remember something if it's told to them once or twice, where I think the other side of that is many people are becoming very visually dependent because of all the digital stimuli that we get. As we know, the average attention span, I think, on mobile is 3 to 5 seconds. So how we learn, other people will slow it down if they need to remember and listen. And that's, again, why a podcast holds so much appeal. And I think we forget that we can do things not just in the standard way of marketing. You don't have to just do a blog. You can do a visual blog. You can do video. You can do information or an interview. So there's a lot of possibilities with digital marketing and with video to think about how do we reach clients? What kind of business do we have? If we have a business that's very detailed, then obviously doing video might help get the point across. And you can also have visual anchors like tiles in a chat and so forth.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about identifying these different learning styles, like maybe starting with ourselves, right? So I think it's a good idea to understand what type of style you are, and then maybe understand what type of style someone else is. Are there some sneaky psychological ways we could figure that out?
Well, I think you can figure that out if you look at analytics on Twitter. Who's responding to your tweets? How are they responding? Are they responding through just retweeting? Are they responding through mention or comment? If they're just retweeting, chances are they've read your tweet and want to amplify it. But the people that comment are actually reading what you have to say and add on to that. So you're reaching them through visual contact and also text. So that gives you some leads about how to approach people that are more social. And again, did you use a visual image with the tweet? Was there any mention of that visual image? Did somebody reach back to you with a video reply? That gets amplified a lot more than just a regular tweet.
That's super interesting. So now let's talk about maybe, because I think this would be really, really helpful to folks if they could understand maybe what types of information are best for what types of media. So what I'm asking is there a certain type of information that's best explained through text and let's say a written blog post versus something like, let's say, a demonstration where you want to show a video screencast? Does that make
Right.
sense? How do you determine what's best? How you should put that information out there?
Well, let's take, for instance, psychology. Psychology is very text dense, and you can explain it. But if I were to give a demonstration of how to soothe a child down psychologically, I might do that through an Instagram story and give a background. And then I might demonstrate techniques and take the visual imagery in tiles with background information and also follow up with an article so that you can touch on the visual, the auditory, maybe a little kinesthetics through movement, and again, a video replay of a demonstration of an actual technique. So that would be good for somebody that sells services.
So Dory, or is this too broad a question about why our styles are different? Is it that we're wired a certain way or are we taught to be a certain way? I guess it's a nature versus nurture question.
Well, Gardner's theory was that we come wired with different ways that some of us see the world and may bring up visual images readily in our mind. Others might read the board, and though that's visual, remember the words like in more of a talking thing. I tend to remember narration pretty easily. I like to learn through auditory, although I'm pretty visual as well.
In the same way that we need to create content for the customer journey, different customers are going to be in different phases of the journey as they move towards purchasing your product or service. We also need to keep in mind that we need to create content for different types of learning styles. So the simple way that we've talked about it so far is there are auditory, which would be video and audio. There's a visual, which would be through images. And of course that there's even kinesthetic, which will really talk about ways that you can allow people to engage with your content. So there are things that you can insert inside your content that allow people to click through things and maybe like choose their own adventure or something like that. Like quizzes are a great example of something like that, or like little assessments where people can click through and engage with that content. So what I hear you saying is that we've really got to have a broad variety of content done in different ways so that different people can consume it.
I think so, especially with people's attention spans minimal. And we're in a business where interactive, social media is social because of the interaction. And the more interaction you have that appeals to more senses, the more a person's memory is going to be hit, and they'll be more likely to retain the information. So we're sort of battling against all the stimuli in the world, including ourselves and our own distractions.
All the more reason to really, really understand who your customers are. I'm a big advocate of actually talking to your customers face to face when possible, whether it's on video or even on a phone call, and really paying attention to the language that they use. One of my favorite tricks is a neurolinguistic programming trick, is I ask them about their weekend and I see how they describe their weekend. Sometimes they'll describe it very visually. Sometimes they'll describe it in an auditory way. That just kind of gives me a sense for who they are. What are some of the tricks that you use and to sort of get to know people on that level?
Well, I will ask them how they're doing, and I'll usually say, tell me about how you're doing and why you're here, especially if they come into therapy. And I'll listen if they use a lot of description. Do they use a lot of verbs? Do they talk in sentences? Do they make one-word utterances? I've had patients who haven't talked through therapy. Obviously, there's a wall there and there's some intense conflicts going on. Another is how people hold themselves. If you're with a customer, you can look at their body language. Do they seem comfortable visually interacting? Are they participating or are they being passive? The language that's used, the language that's chosen. Are they leaning forward and intending interest? Or are they kind of looking around and doing something else? You know, are they interested in their dog or whatever? So does that answer?
Yeah. So once you've identified that, I'm especially interested. Let's pretend that, like, even some of the folks that you've talked about, some of the examples that you've given, if you're talking to a customer and they're responding in one-word answers, for example, what are some things that might say to you about their learning style or their communication style, and how might you adjust your content to meet that style?
Well, I would explore more. I try to do more exploratory questions like, you know, do you feel comfortable in me asking questions? Could you describe your business day for me? How do you start off your business day? What are you find the major challenges in your business? So to kind of sculpt out gently what they're about, what they're doing in their day, how they start off their day, what are their interests, what may be stressors in their business, are they, and if they use a product, you know, how do they feel about the product? Would they be willing to review the product, positive or negative? You know, you can even bring the product out and in the physical place and see how they react to it. Especially if you're launching a new product and you kind of want to do an informative interview.
So let's wrap this up by trying to talk a little bit about the obstacles that come up in creating content and then matching that content with your audience's learning style. What have you seen as some of the obstacles, and then what are some of your solutions to that obstacle?
Well, I think an obstacle that was for me when I first started out on Twitter was the blurt, as I call it, blurting out information and just hoping that it would stick. I think that you need to figure out what kind of information is going to be most effective to your customer. Again, if you're going to use LinkedIn as a major avenue of interaction, then you might need to be prepared that you're going to have to produce some kind of visual content and as well as written content, and what the different responses, and start a conversation with a question written and with a verbal question over video, or ask for feedback on a specific service. You know, what kind of service do you get during tax season from your accountant, for example?
That's great. So is there anything you want to add on that we can wrap up our show with? What is your one piece of advice for helping people match their content to their customer's personality?
Take a look at your own. How do you learn? Would you like someone to reach out to you and kind of get in your business? Or are you standoffish? Do you want to be given a choice about things? You know, and spice it up. You know, if you're selling a book and you've got a lot of information in that book, then bring it to life some way. You know, talk about, you know, you can talk about a process through people or through animation, and a GIF is a great way to add some emphasis, especially if you're using some humor. And a call to action can be delivered in so many different ways, even through movement. You know, I think we see that on Shark Tank, that they make their presentations through a variety of media and perform, give costumes. I mean, they really go out of their way to bring all kinds of stimuli to us to really sell what they're about.
I think that's a terrific way to end the show, because that just tells you that no matter what your message, challenge yourself to come up with different ways of communicating that message, whether it's in the written word, using audio, using video, all of these great ways. All of these are great ways to connect with all the different learning styles that are out there. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Dory, and explaining all of that.
Thank you. It's been great.